Good morning. Before we start, I would like to give a thanks to my son Sruli from the Best Shul for arranging a program yesterday and for having a hand in arranging this one today, and also for the people from this shul who made this whole thing possible, and all the brachas that we say on Shabbos and the Misha Beirach for those who are Isaac and Tzarchei Tzibur should be fulfilled to its entirety. Some of the points that I might make today are not necessarily halacha, but they're suggestive, and the Mitcham I'll mention them as such, but nonetheless, in case I forget by something, not everything is halacha, some things are, as I say, just by suggestion. I'd like to discuss 3 points today. The first one is, what should a person look for when you go to buy tefillin and mezuzahs? The second thing is what you should look for when you go to have your tefillin and mezuzahs checked. And the third thing, this new category called miftzoim. Basically, what tefillin is, we all know. So we're not going to discuss the pashas that go into them. The first of the four pashas that go into tefillin we read yesterday, and some of those details we're not going to get into. However, I would like to discuss some of the things that go under the common label of hidurim, things that are not necessarily the common practice yet, but things a person should look for when you go to buy a proper pair of tefillin. The first thing is it's absolutely necessary that the sefer use a feather to write with and a goose feather at that. The Rebbe mentioned this to Rabbi Zirkin, that you write with a goose feather, and plastic pens are not acceptable and other things not acceptable, metal pens. It has to be specifically a goose feather. The second thing is it's a proper thing that when your tefillin are written, you should give them to a second sefer to check before you're actually going to wear them. Another point is that we're not supposed to make any hefsek. The sefer who's writing is not supposed to make any hefsek. He's not supposed to speak from the time he writes the Vavin Vaydaber until he finishes all 4 pashas. He is absolutely not supposed to speak a word. By way of example, it would be that if a person has a faucet on the side of his house and he hooks up a garden hose to it and the lawn is in front of his house and he draws the hose from the side of his house where the water is to water the garden. If he makes holes in those hoses, like they have something called sprinkler hoses, then water still gets to the front, but it's not with the full whammy. If a sefer spoke in the middle, he makes a cut and dam shach. All the godliness that's supposed to be drawn down has, so to speak, a hefsek and has a cut in it. And therefore, to get the full whammy, the full impact of what tefillin is supposed to do, the sefer is not allowed to speak from the beginning until the end, and also he's supposed to put them into the bottom without speaking. I had the schus and the honor to be involved in the situation of the Rabbeinu Tam tefillin that the Rebbe suggested to Rav Moshe Feinstein to restart wearing Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and I brought the first of the parshas, which is the Shorosh, to Rav Moshe on Friday morning, and Rav Moshe looked at them and he made various positive comments about them, and then he told me that you're supposed to write the Yad and the Rosh on the same day, all without any speaking from the beginning until the very end. However, he said that he wanted to fulfill the Rebbe's bakosha, the Rebbe's request. His Yom Holedus was that Sunday, and the Rebbe wanted him to start wearing tefillin on his 80th birthday, to start wearing them. And therefore, he's willing to forego that it's supposed to really be written on one day. He goes, Vikem medrikin a mensch. How can you push a person into a corner that on a short Friday in Chodesh Adar, he should write a whole entire set of tefillin? So therefore he was willing to, so to speak, settle that only he had the Rosh written in one day and then the Yad was done on Sunday. Rav Moshe's main forte was halacha, and this is what he told me, that they have to be written on the same day. In his case, he made a personal exception out of respect to be able to fulfill the bakosha, the request of the Rebbe. Another thing that's very important to look for when we buy tefillin is that they're supposed to be prudus. That means the sections of the shorosh are supposed to be open or not glued together from the very top all the way down to the bottom. This style that Rebbe mentions, 2 times he used the word mamish, all the way down mamish. Many times they put some glue in and they pshetel. They say, well, it's not completely glued, it's only a little bit, whatever it is. The Alter Rebbe says the word mamish. And by the way, the Alter Rebbe's mamish, we know the impact of that when he says every Jew has it. We have in us a chelik el kal mimal mamish. You literally have a part of the Eibush in us. And when he's talking about a davar gashmi, that it's supposed to be prudus ad lamata mamish, and he says that twice, you can understand the Alter Rebbe shit in it, how strong it is that the prudus must be prudus all the way down to the bottom. And therefore, when you go tefillin, you should go to the, when you get tefillin, you should go to the one you're getting them from, and you want to see that they're prudus ad lamamish all the way down. The other thing is that there's a place that the little hairs that stick out, we should all notice on our tefillin, there's little hairs sticking out on the shorosh. They're supposed to come out from a specific place. Not all the time does it line up that they do it perfectly, and therefore, when it comes to your tefillin, you should make sure that he puts them in the right place, which is opposite the line of the wall of the tefillin. I didn't bring along a model for that to be able to show today, so I guess on the separate cover we could discuss that. The next thing is that it's you have to make sure that your tefillin are not glued closed. There are poskim that hold that the tefillin are not kosher anymore, God forbid, and therefore you have to make sure that your tefillin, when they put the pashas in, they only sew them. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that. The tefillin, the sidus, whoever could see, is supposed to come out opposite the first line, so to speak, going from my right to my left. It's supposed to be at the base of that spot. It's hard to explain in such a small thing. So, getting back to the gluing, it's important that it will only be sewn closed. And a bank vault has to be closed as we know it's supposed to be, like a regular safe. However, tefillin, even if it doesn't close completely perfectly, it's still not supposed to be glued, but rather staying closed only and exclusively with the gidim, with the stitching that are required. The what? I never saw it in any of this for them, yeah. Next, whenever you buy tefillin, just like if a person went to buy something in the world of electronics or appliances, you would always ask for a list of features. What does this refrigerator do that the other one doesn't? Or why should I spend money for this iPad or whatever it is that the other one is not of good quality or doesn't have the same features? The same thing when you go to buy tefillin. You should ask the person, you should write on a paper, what are the hidurim, so to speak, that you're getting in this pair of tefillin? Why is one pair of tefillin cost one amount and another pair cost $1,000 more? What are you getting for your money? The person should enumerate this pair costs more money because, and he enumerates what the advantages are, and just him saying that they're written nicer than the other pair, that's not enough of a reason. He has to be able to say specific things that make this pair better than the other. Next, we'll get to it a bit later, but a person should always ask, if you're going to a sefer directly to get tefillin, then you know who it is. But if you're getting not from the sefer directly, you should ask who wrote these tefillin, and I want his name and his phone number. Do you want, theoretically, you should be able to call him up and contact him. Did you really write these tefillin? So those are some of the points that a person should look for when you get a new pair of tefillin. I'd like to move on to the world of bedika when you get your tefillin checked. You worked so hard to get a pair of tefillin that are proper, and now you're looking to get them checked. The first thing is, you're not supposed to use any light tables, magnifiers. I heard there are some that they blow up the parshas on computer screens. You're supposed to put them down on a table, and you're supposed to check them. Whatever you see, you see. Whatever you don't see, you don't see. You don't need light tables, magnifiers, and all those type of things. Also, any touch-up that's necessary to make.
Why not? Why should you do a particular that's not?
One of the things is, there's a tshuva from Reb Moshe in I believe it's in Chelik Yedidei, about using all these kind of microscopes. And Torah was given for a person to be able to look. So if a person doesn't see well is one thing, but for the average person, the average eyesight, what you see is what you get. You don't have to go through all kinds of extraordinary measures to find things that if you blow something up 1,000 times, you'll see who knows what. I'm sorry, the what? The computer checking is only so good as it is for spelling, to see that you didn't write any extra words, missing words, letters, introverted letters. But however, for the actual checking of the letters themselves, that being proper, that you have to use your own eyes. As far as any touch-ups which are necessary to make, you're not allowed to use any type of metal pens, rapidographs, any of those things. You must use a goose feather, and all the other things are unacceptable. I asked Rav Moshe Feinstein once personally if you're able to make tikkunim, if you're able to make repairs in tefillin and mezuzahs with a metal pen, and he told me that you're not allowed, And then he put in another line. He said, it's possible to make, he spoke to me in Yiddish, but it's possible to make a feather point, to cut the quill in such a way that you'd be able to fix, even line that you'll be able to fix the tag and the crowns on the smallest tefillin and the smallest mezuzahs. And therefore, a skilled worker, a skilled person should be able to imam. Check the tefillin. How much shimush, how much training he had, and over a period of how long. I know that I had the schus that Rabbi Zirkin arranged for me once, that after I learned by him for a few years, he arranged that I should be able to get shimush training and education in tefillin by Rabbi Matlin. Rabbi Matlin was the first sefer of the Rebbe here in America. And I sat for him for 2 years, and he sat next to me. Right, our chairs were next to each other, and he watched everything I did. Not only did he stay watching what I'm doing, he was so close that I like to say if he was any close, I would have sewed his eyeballs into the tefillin. So this wasn't somebody giving training. He just showed you once or twice how to do it, and then he was busy with other things. He sat over me for all these years to make sure every single pair of tefillin was done properly. Rabbi Matlin, Yeshaya Kohen Matlin, he was the first sefer of the Rebbe. I have a family member that, one of my son-in-laws, when he came into the family during the time of the engagement, he wanted I should check his tefillin. And I checked his tefillin, and he had parshas from the renowned sefer Rabbi Aronoff in Toronto. And I complimented him that he had such beautiful tefillin. And in the period of 12 years, I must have checked his tefillin about 9 times. And every time I would compliment, it's such a thanks to your father that you got such beautiful tefillin. Once he gave it to me, this at the time he was making a bar mitzvah for his son. At that period, he was already involved in tefillin, so he wanted to get his replaned and refinished to make them look like new. The next time I checked this tefillin, I told him I was only able to check one pair that day. He was going back to where he lived that day, and I didn't want to be under pressure to do both pairs of tefillin. He gave me his Rashi tefillin, and I saw that they were not Rabbi Aronoff's parshas. So I got very nervous about it, and I asked him to see the other pair of tefillin. I opened up the Rabbeinu Tam, which I did not plan on doing that day, and I said, they weren't Rabbi Aronoff's parshas either. So I asked him who else checked the tefillin. So he said, nobody. And I told him somebody had to check them because they went from Rabbi Aronoff's parshas to something else, and I'm sure it didn't happen by itself. Who checked the tefillin? He said, nobody. And then he was thinking, he said that when he wanted to make his tefillin look like new, the one who was doing it, I'm not too familiar with that type of work, but they told him that they don't want to do it with the parshas inside because in case any of the paint would seep through the shorosh compartments, it might spoil the parshas. They wouldn't take them out. And somehow, when the tefillin were re-put together, he wound up with different parshas. So therefore, you have to know who's the one that's actually doing the work on your tefillin, and you have to ask because it's an important question. You're entitled to know. The other thing is that it's a proper thing. It's not l'halacha, but it's proper that you should stand by the sefer when the work is being done. There was a time that my wife was a nurse in Camp Amunah in Catskills, and I went to visit some relatives that one day. And by the nighttime, I was coming back to Camp Amunah where we were staying, and there was a man hitching on the road looking for a ride with about an 8 or 9-year-old boy. I picked the guy up and asked him, where you going? He was passing through Woodbury, and he was passing through where I was going. We got to the center of town. He said, I'm really not in the center of town. The mile or so down the road. And okay, I'll take him. I didn't want him to have to look for another hitch holding walking with a little kid at night. So on the way, he asked me, what do you do? So I told him what I do. So he said, will you come to my bungalow tomorrow and check my tefillin? So I told him in the summer I don't check, I only write. So will you give me your phone number? I gave my phone number, and to tell you the truth, I thought the chances of him calling back was like taking a glass of water and letting it freeze over in the Sahara Desert. There was no chance this guy was calling back. Sure enough, it came during Elul. Guy calls up, he said, I don't know if you remember who I am. I'm the guy you picked up together with my son. You gave us a ride that night, and I'd like to make an appointment when you could do my tefillin when I'm standing there. I made the point, the guy came. All the conversations we had, both in person and on the phone, were exclusively in Yiddish. I only spoke to him in Yiddish, and he only spoke to me in Yiddish. He came into the house, and he sat. I made a chair for him next to where I work, and he said to me in English. All of a sudden, I didn't know he knew any English. He said to me, "You're an answer to my prayer." I was wondering, what does that mean? Everything he spoke in Yiddish, he says in English, "You're an answer to my prayer." And he told me that he looked for a long time to be able to find a sefer that would let him sit there while he's actually checking the tefillin. And some Sufim told him right out they can't do it, they can't have everybody standing over them and watching them. Other Sufim told me I could do it, but it seems every time they made a date, it just melted away, that day didn't work out at the last minute. He said, when I asked you what you do, you told me that you welcome and encourage that people sit by you. So you see, it's not such an odd request that people want to see that how you do it. And it's a good thing that when you go to get your tefillin mezuzah checked, you should tell the person also. We don't get it checked every Monday and Donishtik, every Monday and Thursday. And therefore, you should try to figure out a time and a schedule with you and the sofer to be able to be there at the time that he's checking them. The other thing is, just like when you buy new tefillin, you have to make sure when the tefillin are being checked, that when they're closed, they should not be glued at that point either. Another topic I'd like to touch on is this new category called Miftzoim. Miksha, would that gentleman give back his tefillin? Okay, put it away. Miksha is the base of the tefillin, the top base of the tefillin, and the part that sticks up is made from one piece. However, in Miksha it would be that the top part and the top part of the base is in two parts, the bottom part that's a flap and the top part. Miksha would be that the top and the top layer of the base is all one piece. And for the reason not getting into in Lubavitch, it's not an Indian in Lubavitch anyway. According to the dictates of Rabbi Dvorkin, that would not be an advantage anyway. Getting back to the Miftzoim, basically, tefillin and mezuzahs, we'll stick to mezuzahs for the moment. Basically, mezuzahs that are going on your and mine and our front door is no different than the mezuzah that's going on Miftzoim. It's absolutely the same. The only thing is that there are certain corrections and touch-ups that are allowed to be made in the mezuzah. After all is said and done, after all the touch-ups were made, a mezuzah that's not so, sometimes just doesn't look quite right. For example, the shin in the word Shema would be one size and the mem is a little lopsided. It's not so perfectly straight. It's not exactly the same size. But each letter has to have all its proper dimensions. It has to have all the crowns and the tagin, just like all other mezuzahs. The only thing is that in those type of mezuzahs that don't cost too much money, the total job doesn't look so neat. I'd like to just show on a chart some of the letters that have crowns that are commonly missed or not put in the right place. The letters Beis, Dalet, Kuf, a Ches, a Yud is a different story because that usually has it anyway, a Hey, and also the two letters of Lamed and an Aleph, that the Aleph has to come up at the bottom and the Lamed has to have two of those crowns on the top, a tall one on the right and a short one on the left. It's very common that some of these or all these tagin are missing. However, it's not hard to put them all in. It takes a few minutes or whatever, but it must be done. You can't say it's miftzoim and therefore it doesn't count. It's integral, just like you're using for yourself. The kashrus of the mezuzah has to be the same for everybody. The beauty of it, that could vary. Another different... I'll get to that in a minute. If I don't, you please remind me.
Meaning we give Hadassim and Arav $36 sets for our Balabat. We buy ourselves $300 esrogin, but we give our Balabat $36 for everything. So the mezuzah should be the same thing.
But the esroglu said that he gave you must be 100% kosher. So the same thing with the mezuzah. It has to have all the requirements. As far as, first of all, as far as that goes like this, that the Eibishter made a person, we have 32 teeth. The Eibush is a chesed, a gewaltige chesed, a kindness to us that a person could live till 120 if he has only 31 teeth. But that 32nd tooth is not extra spare parts. It's an integral part of a person. However, you could live without it. The tagging are integral part of the letter. It's not extra credit if you want it. It doesn't work that way.
So what would be the difference between that and Mitzrayim Dalan
I'm not in that business. There is no difference. No, what I'm saying is there is no difference. They both have to be kosher the way it's supposed to be. The only thing is certain spots, let's say, would be kosher, but not so III, and certain other spots would passel it all together. In the case of a mezuzah, all the tagin have to be there. It's not extra credit. It's an integral part of the letter. And if it's not at the present moment, then you have an obligation to fix it. In the case of tefillin for mivtzoim, there's another leniency that you could use, which we'll discuss in a moment more detail, that most batim that we wear, most tefillin wear, the bias is made of one piece, whether they're dakas from the lighter skinned animals or gasas from the heavier skinned animals. However, it's made from one piece. There's another category of batim that's not one piece. It's a few pieces that are glued and sewed together in a special way, and you make them. They're acceptable as kosher, but they're not so, it's not first class. So those you could use for miftzoyim. If the person knows that you tell him that there's a difference in the halachic quality of it, and he doesn't want to spend more money, or you have to lay out all the money for yourself, you buy from your own pocket, so then you could say that since these are kosher on some level, that you can use it for miftzoyim, even though if you wouldn't want to use that yourself. But again, huh? I don't know. I don't get involved with l'chatchilas.
Is there a klal what's 100% kosher and what's first class, like you said? Or in every case?
First just means it meets all the halachic requirements. It meets all the halachic requirements. When the batim are not made from one piece, it meets it properly made from not from one piece, but properly made, glued and sewed. Then it becomes it's 100% kosher, but it's not preferable. The tagging again, and not extra.
Will be considered 100% kosher
if they're put in.
No, if they don't have it.
No, then it's not 100% kosher. I don't know. It's not. You're not supposed to use it because whatever you.
For example, it says that you don't need to have it.
What?
There's no option not to have it.
There's no option not to have it. No. I would like to also quote pieces of two letters that were written from the Bezdin of Crown Heights in the 1980s. And it was signed by Rabbi Marlow and Unzala Tzalang Yoden, Rabbi Azdaba, and Rabbi Heller, the original Bezdin here in the neighborhood. And in this letter they write that all the stam, all the Sefer Torah, the Tefillin, and Mezuzah that come from Eretz Yisrael must be checked over again. Huh? Do I keep going? I don't know. At any rate, Rabbi Marlow mentions that you're supposed to know the name of the Sefer, asking his name and his phone number. You should be able to contact the person. That's Rabbi Marlow speaking, that you be able to know who the person is. The second thing is, you are not allowed to give out from Miftzoim, even those tefillin that we discussed that are not one piece. If you want to use them for Miftzoim, you must tell the person that there is a difference. And if that's the price he wants to pay, then you have a right to give him those tefillin. And at the same time, if you're laying out the money yourself and you have limited funds, so you can buy him those tefillin as well. Another aspect that Rabbi Marlow and the Rabbanim mention is that all the sofrim have to be registered by the Bezdin. Now, however, we won't discuss the present time, but those people who are suffering, since that time, they definitely had an obligation to register with the Bezdin as per the dictate of the Rabbanim. I have a partial list of those people who registered. Maybe it's not a complete list, but nonetheless, you have to make sure that if your Sefer was practicing in the 1980s, you want to know the documentation that he showed to the Bezdin. Another point I'd like to bring out is that Rabbi Marlow brings out something that's a very interesting observation. in discussing about the tagin that came up a few moments ago, l'chatchila b'di'evet, if they must be, it's nice to be. So Rabbi Malo mentions that all the tefillin and mezuzahs, in order to be sold, they must have all the tagin, even those that are brought in Kabul, like the lamids, the two lamids on the two tagin on the lamids. And he brings in another point. Ki soifer she'enei chosh ledinim hamufurashim bebeis Yosef shulchan aruch mazokin from voim gam b'shar sifrei ha'achronim. That any soifer that wasn't careful to abide by the rules that they set down in Shulchan Aruch and the Beis Yosef and the later Achronim, harei sheksav yodai megalesh umeichiach al ksavai she'enoi elo kemisasek uvchalavdo be'almo. If a person didn't concede to do all these things the way it's brought in the Sfarim, and he wasn't careful about it, so Rabbi Mala writes, his own handwriting is showing that he's just a calligrapher that should be addressing envelopes. In other words, in order to be a sofer, you have to be able to write everything the way it's supposed to be. The only thing is, everybody is human, so it could be he missed a tag here or there. So that you could fix. But to be missing parts of the letter on a regular basis, all his lamids weren't right, and all his bases and all his daleds were all missing tag, and he's showing that either he never learned in the first place, in that case he should find another occupation, or he learned it and he doesn't care about it, which is even worse. So therefore, all of those tefillin and mezuzahs that come in that need the repairs, that you're supposed to make them. And when you go to buy something, you should try to insist that they should not be the repair, but they should be written properly in the first place, the way it's supposed to be, with all the tagin, etc.
Most people write mezuzahs without the tagin, and then they have somebody else write the tagin. That's the way the system works with the site.
I can't get into that. Okay, anyway, these are some of the points when you go to buy new tefillin, what you should look for, and when you get them checked, about standing over the person and making sure they're done properly. One other point I'd like to bring out is that when you go to Clapman or anybody else to get Sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzahs, if they tell you there's a problem, you should ask yourself, if the person is making a problem and he's willing to sell me a replacement, does that cast a shadow on the credibility? Or he's such a tzaddik, he's so objective to it that even though he's not going to make a sale, but if he tells you there's a problem, he's not going to sell you a replacement. Because if he sells you a replacement, does that cast a shadow? Maybe he was strict that this isn't so proper in order to make, instead of a few dollars on checking, he makes a lot more money on selling something new. So you have to ask yourself, is that person beyond the challenge of his credibility? Anyway, Shem Yisrael, we should be able to mekayim all these mitzvahs in a proper way and everything for ourselves and for others. And
where is glue allowed on the tefillin? Because there is glue involved.
where glue might be allowed in tefillin, I would say you should discuss with Rabbi Yosef all the time on President Street. He's an expert batamacher, and he knows all the ins and outs of where something is permitted, not permitted. I would suggest that you have a conversation with him.
But most people here have glue in their...
I didn't take a census.
So this letter,
You check right now.
Huh?
Most people here, their bottom will not go down to the bottom.
I am not it's your statement, not mine. I'm not subscribing that most people have it, don't have. I don't know. I don't take a survey.
There are other shitas that say it's perfectly okay.
I'm not discussing all the shitas. I'm telling you that Rebbe Koski said it's not okay. And he's the Rebbe's Ruv, and that's it.
so this is Rabbi Malo wrote about a sefer that doesn't write the time while he's writing it.
I'm sorry, what?
This thing you read before from Rabbi Malo. A sefer that is writing Mezuza or film, he has to write the time on the letters right away. Yes?
Is that you saying it or me saying it?
Asking a clarification.
Yes.
No, I'm asking.
I answered your question. He's supposed to do it as he goes along.
What would be different on the Megillah level? Is that a whole new kind of work?
I introduced and talk about tefillin and mezuzahs.
Why isn't there a kashrus agency like there is with
Why isn't there?
kashrus agency?
I have no. That's not my line. I don't know.
You talk about the street, the Giddim, why the shul, what they need to be made out of, and what.
I didn't get into what we make the giddim from because that would be, my little cipher show. That's a different category.
I remember a while back, I brought my Phillips to check, and you couldn't check it at the time because there were no Giddim on the market.
That's because it's because there are some giddim that are made with the tanai that you could use it for Sefer Torah, for tefillin, and it's more preferable that you get for Sefer Torah the giddim that are made special for Sefer Torah. And I don't particularly like I don't particularly like to use the word mahudr. But in first place, if possible to get for Sefer Torah, that's preferable for Sefer Torah. And tefillin giddim, which are made for giddim, that's more preferable for tefillin. If you make for Sefer Torah, you could use it for everything.
Why don't they just pick what Machila always brought Torah?
I answer because it's a better end product, we'll call it, when it's made special for tefillin.
I'm saying it's just what they're saying. Shem Kiddush is Sefer Torah. What is the difference when they do it for Torah too? When they say the Shem Kiddush is film, the Shem Kiddush is Sefer Torah?
The difference is if it's made for that particular Sefer Torah or tefillin, that's a better type of giddim to use. As far as klaf, it's better klaf to use that way also. But if you make for Sefer Torah, you're covered for everything.
Is that about posing the soul that when they grew, right? Isn't there some little plaster they used in the boats when they closed
I don't know. I don't get involved with the theys.
But when it gets sold the first time, it looks beautiful, completely shut.
You have to find out when they look beautiful shut. If there's anything, I'll tell you something. I told once a sefer from Europe. I told him about a certain type of eraser that's very good to go over a Sefer Torah with. It takes off the dust or whatever, and it doesn't disturb any letters. And he was so in the spell, he thought that was such a great thing that I told him. He said, I'm going to tell you something. He learned from a sefer that you mix baby powder and paint, and you make like a mud out of it, a sour cream out of it, and you slip that into the bottom, to close up the gap. So I told him I wasn't taught to put some baby powder and sour cream in my tefillin. So what the days, I don't know. I don't get involved with the days. No.
The recent video, did you have a chance to review still? And how many of those Mezuzah actually possible?
I can't, what?
The recent video, did you have a chance to review every Mezuzah, the pictures, not the video? And how many of them are really possible?
I'm not in the video business.
Not in the video, in the picture.
I'm not in the videos. If I don't want to open up a new can of worms. However, I cannot. First, I don't know why anybody would want my opinion in the first place. But if you want my opinion, you have to show me the mezuzah, not a picture, not a paper picture, and surely not a screen picture. How long? How long check? Okay, a question was asked, how often should a person get their tefillin checked? So minimally it should be the proverbial twice in 7 years. The Rebbe brought by Farbrengens on different occasions, different sources that mention you do it every year. There's a medrash that says every other year. It's not damaging. And also there were other times that the Rebbe seems to have told people on different occurrences to check their tefillin and or mezuzahs. But if you're asking the minimal is once every 3.5 years, approximately. My hearing isn't even so. Isn't so. Haven't heard that. I'm not negating it. Just I can't comment. I don't know. I don't hear. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. I don't know. No. In those times that the Rebbe was answering, in a period of, let's say, a month, a guy could have got the answer 3-4 times to check his tefillin and the mezuzah, whatever it was. I would like to share something that I cannot document anymore because it could be I'm misquoting. I believe or I think that I heard from Rabbi Zirkin once that when a person checks their tefillin and or mezuzahs, this came out that a directress of the Satmar Day Camp, a lady, she's directress of the Satmar Day Camp, she asked me to come and do a Sefer program for the Satmar Girls Camp, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. First of all, that they should have some intense thing, a man should come to speak to girls about tefillin, mezuzahs, and it just didn't sound... Anyway, after I finished the program, she asked me to do it in Yiddish, but anyway, she said, she wants I should do the program now in the boys' camp. It was in Borough Park, a few blocks away. And I had trouble believing what I was hearing. She wanted to come in the car with me. That was another thing. She gets in the car. As soon as the door closes, she asks me, what's going on that Lubavitch Rebbe tells people to check their tefillin and mezuzah so often? She says, this whole thing was just a setup, I guess, to be able to ask the question. And I told her, why did Rebbe tell somebody to do something? Clapman has no idea. But I'll share something that I heard. And that was that I think I heard Rabbi Zirkin tell me that when a person checks their tefillin and or mezuzahs, it's Mishana Mazoloi. Whatever Mishana Mazoloi is, his fortune, is whatever it is, Mishana Mazoloi. And therefore, if that's the case that Rabbi Zirkin, I think he told me he's brought in Kisvei Yisrael someplace, but therefore, it may be, I have no idea what I'm saying emphatically, but it could be that the Rebbe, in his great, sources, he sees that a person goes, to take a shower, so the water is running. It's too hot, too cold, it's running there's only trickling, you want to have a heavier stream, so you have to adjust it. It could be that the Rebbe sees in Ruach Minasa, in the Rebbe's greatness, that he sees that the shower's on the way, but you check it again, it'll again change it, possibly has something to do on that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're supposed to start taking out light tables and magnifiers and computer blow-ups and all that kind of stuff. You have to go a normal way. Some people get it to a different sefer the second time or the third time, but you don't change the methods of how you're supposed to check. Okay, was I benched everybody?